In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. This is Crime and Punishment, our weekly audio program, and it is still not working. Now it is working. So, for those who have been along with us on this saga, I apologize. For those who have not, we had some technical difficulties. We are now 19 minutes late broadcasting because of it, because the audio was not working. So, we will have to go through this entire thing all over again. But that's okay, because Tiger and I are here. We are changing the format of this show so that we will be doing not just every Monday night at 8 p.m., but every night, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. This is, for those who do not know, a legal podcast. It is absolutely not political whatsoever. This is the podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida, the website for which is at augustusinvictus.com. We have several very important updates for tonight besides the change in format of the show. Tiger Jen will be talking about the Chauvin case, but first, I have the actual important news, which is the Young Lawyers Division of the Florida Bar began its Olympics on Thursday, April 1st. Now, these guys, you have to be 36 years old or younger to be part of the Young Lawyers Division. But thank goodness that they actually opened the Olympics to all lawyers in Florida. A grave mistake on their part. Because I am 37, which means I am a year too old to be in the Young Lawyers Division anymore. I used to be, but I aged out, kind of like a 25-year-old on MTV. So now I am out, but the Olympics are open to everyone. A grave mistake, I say, because I took first place as of Friday, day 2 of the competition, and I will never lose first place. After this week, moreover, no judge, no lawyer, no bar association in the state of Florida will ever be able to close that gap, be able to come anywhere near my points in the Olympics, and let me explain why. These Olympics are over 2 months. They are the months of April and May. They end on May 27th. And during that time, each competitor ranks, they add up points, right? It's an ingenious point structure because it's not based on just exercise. So it's not made for super athletes like yours truly. It's made for anybody and everybody, all attorneys. And it's a health and wellness Olympics. So these Olympics are not just about weightlifting or kayaking or walking or running, although they do include these things, but they're also about your lifestyle choices. So, for instance, every time I sleep 7 hours, I get 3 points. So every day, automatic 3 points, because I always sleep 7 hours. Every time you have a healthy eating session, which for me is like 6 times a day, I get a point for every session. And I will always get a point for every session because for 4.5 years now, for those of you who know all the things that I do, I have been eating like that this entire time. I have a 7-year science experiment where I got rid of all these things. So every week, you get to count 5 points if you have not had sugar, sweets, or candy. For me, automatic 5 points. Every week, you get an automatic 10 points for not imbibing alcohol. So I am famously sober, 10 automatic points a week for me. So 10 automatic points for not drinking, 5 automatic points for not eating junk food. That's 15 automatic points every single week. Plus 3 automatic points every single night because I always sleep 7 hours. Plus 1 point every time I eat, which is several times a day. And so these points add up, and they added up so fast I wasn't even training last week, and I still took first place. Because they also count not just exercise and sleep and dietary choices and not drinking alcohol, but they also add meditation. Little did the lawyers in Florida know that when I was falsely imprisoned for 8 months in maximum security isolation, the number one activity for somebody like me is yoga. Because what else can you do? There is reading, yoga, and push-ups. That is basically life in jail. So, I can't wait for the end of this competition. And let me tell you why. And I really hope that someone from the Young Lawyers Division is listening to this broadcast. For the first 3 days of this competition, the Young Lawyers Division was reposting all of my posts to Instagram, to Twitter, to Facebook. They were saying, this is the guy to watch. Or is it? Who out there is going to challenge Invictus? Who out there is competition for the Invictus Law Firm? These guys are in it to win it. This guy came here to win. Eventually, somebody clued them in to whom they were reposting. They figured out they were posting a supervillain's Olympics posts. And not only did they stop reposting my things, they actually went back and deleted all of the posts that they had previously made supporting me. Incredible. But what's really incredible, or what will be really incredible, is the day I win on May 27th. And the Florida bar is forced to recognize that Augustus Invictus won the Olympics in Florida. That is going to be the biggest crow-eating fest in the history of the state of Florida. I can't wait. I can't wait. Freedom Falcon says, I can't believe that there are that many unhealthy young lawyers in Florida. Well, that's not technically the case, Freedom Falcon. There are a lot of healthy lawyers in Florida. I'm just healthier than all of them. And this is something that Tiger and I were discussing on the last stream that apparently there was no audio for, is that this is... Yeah, that's too bad. But we can go on some rants this time around too, I'm sure. But what we were talking about is the fact that this is not just exercise. This is about a lifestyle, right? So those things I've mentioned, they are counted, but something like, cold showers, that's not counted. Something like sleeping on the wood floor is not counted. And so it might be that there are many healthy young lawyers in Florida. They're just, they don't eat, breathe, and sleep this like I do. So, right. I've slept on the floor since I was in high school. Like, this is just, I've always, so when I went to jail, and sleeping conditions are notoriously bad in jail, I was right at home. It wasn't, yeah, you've got to sleep on some plastic mat on concrete, but there's not much difference between concrete and the wood floor. As long as you have something in there to break your fall, it's all right. It's not bad. Can't hear Tiger Gin. Tiger, we've got to boost you somehow. How's your mic output?
Let's see if it's my mic problem here.
All right, let's try that. The inundation, he's asking, why don't you drink, nerd? Show praise to Dionysus. What? Excellent question. Thank you for asking so we can go on a 30-minute rant about the evils of drinking. It's the same thing. Yes, it's the same thing for everything else we've been complaining about, and we are drifting from the legal aspect of the show. But let me tell you why. Yeah, first of all, my son just said because he needs to win the Olympics. That's true. Every week I don't drink, I get 10 points. But before that, I already didn't drink. And there's a reason for that. Over 4.5 years ago now, I began this 7-year science experiment. And it was about, this whole law of attraction thing, right? You attract not what you want in life, but you attract what you are. And so it occurred to me at this crisis in my life over 4.5 years ago that the people surrounding me were really a reflection of me. And if I wanted that to change, I had to change myself at the risk of sounding, So I quit drinking, and I quit drugs, and I quit eating sugar, and I, most important of all, quit eating bread. And that was really the crutch in my life was bread. So I quit all of these things, and the changes in my life were dramatic from that point forward. And of course, it ended up a couple years later in me living with, criminal elements and drug addicts and so on and so forth for 8 months. But for the most part, I'd say my science experiment has worked wonders so far. As for why you shouldn't drink, those of you who are not part of this science experiment, drinking is just plain bad for you. And after you've not drank for a year and you try that again, you really see what poison it is. It really is literal poison that you are putting into your body. It used to be I would drink at night because being a writer, that's like the romantic thing. You drink while writing all night. And I did that for years and years and years. And I would wake up feeling like absolute garbage. And after quitting drinking, I would wake up feeling magnificent. And in fact, after years of not drinking, I wake up feeling magnificent every morning. And I feel magnificent all day, every day. Alcohol is really just the most insidious poison in American culture. Well, perhaps not the most insidious poison. We could probably spend an hour on that. But psychedelics, thought criminals, psychedelics are absolutely banned in the Olympics, by my opinion. Now, you don't get any points for not doing psychedelics, but I'm pretty sure it's understood that you should not be doing drugs while participating in the Olympics. And I think entheogens would count for that. So one thing you were mentioning, Tiger, is Wim Hof, right? So cold showers, unfortunately, are not part of the Olympics. You don't get any points for that. But deep breathing exercises do count. So that is good stuff. So those are all pretty important. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm watching the chat. I don't see it. Maybe they didn't hear you at all, and so they're not responding at all. I can hear you just fine though. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, you were telling a story about how you came to take. They say you're still quiet. Maybe just scoot up to the microphone. I don't know. Oh, thank you, Freedom Falcon. He asked, is no fat part of the Olympics? Thank you for that question, because that is a rant we went on the quiet audio stream we had to redo. No, it is not, unfortunately, but let me give you my rant here. And it involves cold showers as well. I have not taken hot showers in a long time. So Tiger was telling us the story. He's fixing his microphone right now, but he was telling us a story of how he came to take cold showers starting when he was in the Army. And I was saying I had quite the opposite experience, where I started taking cold showers after jail. Because at jail, the water is scalding hot. It burns you. There is no, obviously, chance to change the temperature. You are at the jail's mercy, as in all things. When I got out of jail, I started taking cold showers immediately. And I could count on one hand the number of hot showers I have taken since leaving jail. And they were always in the event of some kind of emergency, like I've got to get to court right now, I've got to get whatever it was. So I just don't do it. And it's not just because of my hatred for the American jail system. It's a health thing too. And it's not just yoga, but it is an existential health issue. When I was in law school, I read voraciously because law school to me was so just intellectually suffocating that I had to do external reading. And a lot of the things I read were biographies on Napoleon. I've read more Napoleon biographies than I could count. And one of the theories of his decline is that he had developed the habit of taking hot baths. And the hot baths caused his health to decline. And I really genuinely believe that that is true. I think that hot showers, hot baths, this habit that we have of taking them really does weaken you. It lowers the test, as we say. You become addicted to this luxury. And what Freedom Falcon was asking, this is a family show, but I will say that, and I think we talked about this in the episode about sin, actually a few weeks ago, that sexual dissipation is itself a luxury, and it is one that should be forsaken by every single one of you listening, all 29 of you listening right now, and everybody who replays this show. You should stop doing that. Do not dissipate your energy. Keep that and do yoga, and I promise you your entire life will change. That dissipation, the luxury of showers, it's like eating ice cream every day or drinking alcohol every day. It poisons you, it destroys you. And when it destroys you, it destroys your family. And when everybody's doing it, it destroys all of American society. So, Tiger, how are we doing on this microphone issue? I can still hear you fine. All right. Well, you try to project on the Chauvin issue, and I will try to find out if there's a way I can boost your audio from my end. How about that? Because for those of you listening, if you missed the beginning of the program, we have changed the format of this show so that we will be doing this every night at 8 p.m. instead of every Monday at 8 p.m. We're doing it daily. So we've got to talk about how we're going to freaking get your microphone up. So go ahead, and I'm going to start trying to figure this out on my end.
Allegedly thrown around, and this is very important. And it's an important concept because of exactly what happened today, what I'm predicting will happen, and put simply, just what the justice system is, what it is about. So I'm watching the Chauvin trial on Court TV, and it is, those legal commentators are about as biased can be against Chauvin. And I didn't even see them report on the news that came out of the trial today. But staying on innocent before proven guilty, this is why criminal defense attorneys and public defenders can go into court and say, my client, who you say was caught on camera blatantly stealing something is innocent. Even though you can see his face clear as day on camera and he's sitting here right next to me and you got his fingerprints and all that, he is innocent. The reason why he is innocent is because he is not guilty until the judge and jury say he is. That is what innocent before proven guilty is. He is innocent. Everybody who goes into court is innocent. Derek Chauvin is innocent. Right now, he is innocent. That is what innocent before proven guilty is. And it's not just some phrase that's thrown around, because there are court systems in the world that are guilty before innocence. That is, China is a good example in their court system. When somebody goes in before court, they have to prove their innocence. They have the burden of proof to show that the charges are false, that they're wrong. They are seen as guilty until they can bring forth the evidence that they're innocent. Conversely, in our system, the state has to bring the evidence to prove that the person is guilty. Otherwise, he's innocent. Everybody is innocent until the judge or jury say that they are guilty. That is how it is. So there's no, I hear on the internet, Team Floyd, Team Chauvin. I'm like, no, every American citizen should be Team Chauvin. That's just how it is. And as I said before, whenever you're reading news reports and things like that, they're biased towards the state. They have a state-held bias because they're reading the prosecution's side of the story. Nobody knows. I see every day I'm watching this trial, and on court TV they have ads about the trial, and they're the story. Now here's the trial. No, you don't know the story, not until you go through the trial. So that's my big rant there, and I think I got worked up enough that everybody can hear that.
Yes, so everybody can hear you. The audio issue is apparently fixed, but I would modify one thing, or at least give a little pushback on one thing. I wouldn't say we all have to be Team Chauvin. I would say, like my father said to me when I was growing up, right? Your client, because my father, obviously, as everybody knows, was a criminal defense attorney too, your client is not what you're defending. You're defending the Constitution. So your client could be guilty of sin, and that's one thing. But what you're defending is the Constitution. So if this guy has cocaine on him, but the cops searched him illegally, you're not fighting to prove that the guy didn't have cocaine, right? You're not fighting to prove that he was innocent of possessing cocaine. What you are fighting to prove is that the police overstepped their bounds. The police acted illegally. You are not defending the guy who had cocaine. You are defending the Constitution, because if you don't, then that cop stepping over those bounds, he's going to do it to you too. He's going to do it to everybody. He's going to do it to law-abiding citizens. And how old am I? That was 20 years ago, right? And look at us now. Look at police overstepping bounds now.
Yeah, well, as in the book you're reading, Gerry Spence, in the beginning of that book, he talks about how he does a survey with the public defenders that he trains. And he asks them, how many cases have you had where a police officer broke the law? And he says, how do you put it? But essentially, the public defenders, they would say every single case they have, the police are breaking the law. Every single time. And so that's also part of my
What city is that
here.
in?
He says everywhere. And that you can read in the introduction of his book Police State, where he describes how he takes this survey. And he'll say that he'll get a few public defenders that'll say, I didn't raise my hand that every case I have, the police broke the law, because I've had 3 where they didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my own anecdotal experience, I cannot honestly say that in every case I've ever had, the police have broken the law. I can't say that. But in a good majority of them, they certainly have, right? And in my cases specifically, where they have come after me, that is 100%. They have all broken the law coming after me. But yeah, I couldn't
And that
say
gets
all
into
cases.
and what I want to say here about the trial too is that as people listen to me describing it, they might think I'm like some back the blue guy, or I think Chauvin is this great guy. I'm sure he's just as crooked and slimy as so many other police officers. I mean, I'm sure of it, and maybe he did break the law in what he was doing here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. So,
Yeah,
anyway.
that's why I just don't talk about the case, because people try to come at me and say, what are we going to do about Derek Chauvin, and how are we going to support him, and what can we do to help him? I'm like, why would you? He made his bed. Let him lie in it. I have zero sympathy for a cop on trial. I've seen too much corruption. So I mean, he may be innocent, and right now, like you said,
for his attorney.
Yes, I certainly have sympathy for his attorney, because he's going to get a lot of bricks thrown at him.
Yeah.
But like you said, Derek Chauvin is innocent. He is 100% innocent, because he has not been proved guilty. And that I will say all day long and yell it from every rooftop. The man is innocent because he is not being proved guilty. And until he is proved guilty, I have no opinion of Derek Chauvin. I don't know if he's a scumbag like his colleagues are in the police force. I don't know if he broke the law. I have no idea. I'm completely agnostic about it. But for right now, he is 100% innocent. That is a fact. That is a legal fact. And if it's not a fact, and if you don't disagree with that, then kindly self-deport to Mexico. We should probably talk about this book sometime today. We were supposed to finish this book tonight.
Well, I'll drop the big news now. I mean, I wanted to get into the intricacies of the trial, but what happened today, I mean, I did a search right before the show, and I can only find lawofficer.com of all places talking about it. So what happened was the chief of Minneapolis police was on the stand as the prosecution's witness. And during cross-examination, the defense brought up some new video that we've never seen before. And he put it up side by side with the famous Chauvin pose photo that we've always seen, and put the two videos side by side. The one is Officer, I don't know, weird name, Spotty Cam, right alongside the famous footage shot. And what it shows is that Chauvin's knee was not on Floyd's neck. It was on his upper back. And the defense with the chief of police on the stand, he says, "Have you seen this video before?" "No, I have not," the chief says, with his eyes really big and wide. Is Chauvin's knee on the upper back of George Floyd? "Yeah, that's what I see." And if we would have had a show last week, I was all prepared to say that I was fully expecting this, because the defense was admitting their own video footage, and you can only imagine why the prosecution was saying we're going to be prepared to object to it. And that's because cameras can lie. This is why the UFC has a whole bunch of camera angles at any given moment, and it'll be like, oh, was the fighter's hand touching the mat at the time? Was he tapping or not? Let's get a different camera angle. That's exactly why. And I don't see anybody reporting on this except Jack Posobiec on Twitter and lawofficer.com.
Interesting. So
the knee was not on the neck.
You heard it here first, unless you follow Jack Posobiec on Twitter. Well, that is big news. That is big news. And that is illustrative of why you don't say anything before a trial, right? So,
and you don't burn buildings before a trial.
yeah, that's probably good advice too. Yeah, because remember when they were, you sent me the clip actually, we didn't play it on air, but the prosecution was trying to get Kyle Rittenhouse's address when he moved and trying to get his bond revoked and try to get his bond raised, etc., etc. And the judge was like, no, are you insane? I'm not going to request his address. I'm not going to allow it to be released to you. I had bricks thrown through this very courtroom window right over there because of this case. And you really think that these people are not going to seek to retaliate or to enact violence against this kid? Absolutely not. I'm not going to have his address turned over to you. That was just heroic, but it goes to your point. Don't burn things down before the trial. Don't throw bricks through courtroom windows, right? Because the more you're attacking, the more the judge sees what is going on. So, what were we... I feel like we were just about to say... Oh! Right, about the Chauvin trial. That's why you don't say anything before the trial, right? So, you're saying the defense put this video on, and the chief of police is like, no, I've never seen that. So, had they shown this video beforehand, had they released it to the public, what would the effect have been? Would it have been all of these people in America saying Chauvin is a murderer, etc., etc.? Would it have been them saying, oh, well, I guess we didn't see it from that angle. I guess the guy is innocent. Absolutely not. All it would have done is it would have given them the chance to change their story, change the narrative. And this is true in every case. This is why defense doesn't often go on the offensive in the media. This is why the defense does not show all of its cards, because they know that witnesses are liars and prosecutors are liars. That's a blanket statement that is not supposed to be a blanket statement. There are prosecutors who are ethical lawyers, and I owe one prosecutor in particular for his integrity, but everybody knows an alleged victim or a witness who is interested in the outcome of the case, they will lie. And if you show them your cards and they know what they're, going to be putting on, they will change their entire story. And then what are you going to do? So, you hold some cards, you wait for that witness to lie, and then you show it to them. Then you show the evidence. So, that's defense practice 101. So, when you see someone accused of the crime, of any crime, and they're not saying anything about it, they're being tight-lipped, they refuse to show you the evidence about it, or they refuse to talk about it, it doesn't mean that they're guilty. It means possibly that they are innocent and that they do have the witnesses and the evidence, and that they're holding it because they know what would happen if they released it. So this is a great example of that. So what do you say we finish off this story, since we've got we're halfway through the show now. For those who have checked in late, we had an audio problem where we had to redo the stream, and we started at about 8:19, so we are about halfway through the show this time, and we will be going to about 9:20 this evening. So we have been for the past 2 weeks, except for last week because we took the week off, because now we are starting the daily show. We have been reading from The Secret Lies of the FBI. It is chapter 2 in Gerry Spence's book, Police State, How America's Cops Get Away with Murder. It has nothing to do with the Chauvin trial. I didn't even think about that. This has no commentary whatsoever about the Chauvin trial. Like we said, he is innocent till proven guilty. This chapter about the FBI and the Madrid bombing case, it has absolutely nothing to do with the Chauvin trial. I want to disclaim that right now. So if you haven't heard the rest of this chapter, please go back and listen to episodes, I believe, 7 and 8, which are parts 1 and part 2 parts 1 and 2 of The Secret Lies of the FBI. So we will continue, and no matter how far we get tonight, we are going to finish this because we are going to move on with our lives. We've already done 3 episodes on this, so let's finish this out, shall we? Later, I asked Brandon why he had, that is Brandon Mayfield. He was, for those, just to refresh your memory, Brandon Mayfield is an attorney. He was a Muslim convert, ex-army. He was wrongly suspected of being part of the Madrid bombings in 2004. They went after the wrong guy because the FBI is incompetent, and even though it was pointed out to them that they were wrong and that their fingerprint guy was incompetent, they still went after the guy until the Madrid police, the Spanish police, the equivalent of the FBI over there, said, no, this fingerprint is useless, what are you doing? So, later, I asked Brandon why he hadn't produced the records in his office that would prove where he was when the bombing took place. His answer echoed what I've heard time and again from those feeling the full weight of power's boot heel. True, I hadn't been out of the country since 1993, Brandon said, but why would they listen to me? I was the terrorist, and I was terrorized. I couldn't believe this was happening in America. My public defender was afraid they were going to send me to Guantanamo, and I was more worried about his wife and the kids than anything. What would happen to them? And they were rifling through my confidential client files. No lawyer can permit that, yet I couldn't stop them. His wife was afraid, not only for Brandon, but for herself and her family. They weren't safe, even behind the locked doors of their home. And they didn't have a husband and father to protect them. All she could tell her children was that it would all work out. Their daddy didn't do anything wrong. There'd been a terrible mistake. That's personal. But she knew that the real mistake was that they were Muslims. And she knew that the ringing guarantee in the Constitution that Americans are free to worship as they please had crumbled around them. Nothing in the Constitution would save her husband, or her, or their children. Now you could safely translate this to modern day, almost 20 years later, and say that she knew the real mistake was that they were white nationalists. And she knew that the ringing guarantee in the Constitution that Americans have free speech had crumbled around them. You could say that. But then you'd be banned from YouTube, so we will not say that. Then the Spanish police, to continue, not the FBI, not the Department of Justice, not our courts or judges or jurors, not even our sacred Constitution, but the Spanish police saved Brandon Mayfield. On May 19, 2004, the Spanish National Police advised the world that they had matched the fingerprint on the blue plastic bag to an Algerian, whose name I will not attempt to pronounce. Like the proverbial culprit caught with his hand in the cookie jar, the FBI quietly, in a soft international mumble, admitted that its fingerprint identification of Brandon Mayfield was in error. And incredibly, the FBI then stated that LFP-17, that is the number they gave to the fingerprint, attributed wrongly to Brandon Mayfield, that LFP-17 was, quote, of no value for identification purposes, end quote. No value? No value. And Brandon was released. What an incredible story. FBI breaks into this guy's office under the sneak and peek of the Patriot Act, goes through his confidential client files, because he's an attorney, I will have you recall. They bug his office, so they're listening in to all of his privileged attorney-client conversations. All of this on a wrong identification. Because the FBI never gets anything wrong. And then it was not them, and not our courts, not our judges, not the prosecutor, none of these people fixed this. The Spanish police fixed it. Out of the blue. God bless them. Now we enter a separate section, and here's where it gets very human. This is not talking about the corruption in the courts, judicial corruption, corruption in law enforcement. This is the human side of it, which I can personally attest to you is Far worse. How had Brandon's false arrest affected his children? Shane, 14, the Mayfield's oldest, had been waiting for his mom to pick him up after school. He remembers his mother coming toward him with tears in her eyes, a sight he'd rarely seen. "Your dad's been arrested by the FBI," she said. At first, Shane didn't believe it, but his mom kept crying as they drove to Sharia's school to pick her up. Shane went in to get her and shared the news. Dad's been arrested by the FBI. At first, Sharia thought it was a joke, but when she saw the truth in Shane's eyes, she too started crying. When they got home, the doors of the house were wide open, swinging in the wind. The first thing Shane saw was sticky notes with foreign handwriting on them, one on the exhaust fan in the kitchen and one in each of the other rooms in the house, labeling each room. The place looked as if a cyclone had hit it. They found the cats locked in the closet. "My life had been so normal," Shane said. "I couldn't believe it could get so weird so fast." He went up to his room. He'd saved his old homework and shoved all the papers in a cabinet underneath the TV, a stack of papers 7 or 8 inches high. Now his homework was thrown across the floor. On the other side of the room, his soccer shoes and his shin guards were on the floor where they'd been dumped out of his soccer bag. The cops had even taken his computers and hard drives. Later that evening, Shane looked through the blinds of his room and saw the lights and the television trucks. The phones were ringing and his mom was outside trying to talk to the press. That weekend, his friend Abdul called and said, "It's a good thing you didn't come to school on Friday because things got really hot about what happened." Shane said he was afraid to go back to class. Who out there was going to believe that my dad was innocent and not a terrorist? He remembered a visual from one of the television stations that had Madrid bombing and red blood dripping down a yellow screen. A few days later, when Shane returned to school, he worried that someone would beat him up and that his grades would be affected. His Spanish teacher asked for his homework and he said, "I don't have it. It's been confiscated." The whole class was staring at him. Shane thought, everybody who ever liked me is thinking, man, that guy's related to a terrorist. In his literature class, the kids started asking him questions. The teacher just listened and looked on. It embarrassed and scared him. The more he tried to argue that his father was innocent, and presumed so under the Constitution, the more kids argued against it. The FBI wouldn't arrest an innocent person. How do you argue against that? Shane told me that suddenly he found himself the man of the house, and he didn't know how to comfort his mother and the 2 younger kids. His mom was brave, but the family was panicked. What if they killed their father? What if they had to move out of their house? What if they didn't have enough money to eat? If they could take his dad, who was innocent, they could take his mom too, Shane thought. Both his dad and mom were Muslims. Maybe the FBI would kill them all. He remembered going to their law office with his mother and seeing a footprint on the tabletop. He looked at the place where the phone lines were and saw red duct tape around the wires. The worst was when he visited his father in jail. I was sitting in a room with a lot of people I didn't normally sit with. It felt creepy. They gave us an alias. Then a police officer would call us in. When it was our time to go, it was like, "Mr. Taylor's visitors," and "Oh, yeah, that's us, the Taylors." The family was led to the far end of the visiting booth where they could see his father, in chains, standing behind the door. Then the guards led his father in on the other side of the bulletproof glass that separated them, and Shane thought, "I'll never be able to touch him again. He's going to prison for life, and they'll probably kill him." When he saw his father, he said to himself, "Suck it up, Shane. Dad can't see you like this." Shortly, the guard came in and said, "Time's up." Shane put his fist up to the window, and his father put his fist up to the window. Shane was in math class when he got a phone call at the principal's office from his mother. The good news? His father was out of jail and was home. He said, "I was so happy, but when I got home, Dad still had that really concentrated look on his face because he was under house arrest." "What's going to happen, Dad?" Shane asked. "They are going to put me on trial, but don't worry. The jury will find me innocent." Well, at least Mr. Mayfield's kids got to visit him. York County Detention Center does not allow visitation under 18 years old. Orange County Corrections Department does not allow visitation at all except by video. It's amazing how out of hand things have gotten in this country when it comes to visitation, when it comes to taking people's children away from them, when it comes to false arrests. Not that we know anything about that on this program. Brandon, to continue, contacted me through a mutual friend, one of America's great women lawyers, Mrs. Eder. He wanted me to represent him against the U.S. government for the devastation he and his family suffered at its hands, the hands of their own government. I invited him to come to Wyoming to tell me his story, and he did, this serious-looking young lawyer with the hurt in his eyes and the weight of the world sitting on his slumped shoulders. As I listened to Brandon, I began to wonder, how could any person fully recover from such a lethal attack? He'd been falsely accused by his own government of unimaginable crimes he did not commit and threatened with death for their commission. He'd been helpless to prove his innocence and was teetering on the edge of both emotional and actual extinction at the hands of the FBI, an institution created to protect him and his family that had betrayed them instead. Mrs. Eder and I decided to bring in a leading Oregon lawyer who knew what to do in cases in which critical, abstruse issues of law were embedded, a man who could find his way around the Oregon court system like a hound dog at home, Eldon Rosenthal. We three filed suit for the Mayfield family members against the individual FBI agents as well as the U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft. Why didn't we sue the FBI? Under law, we citizens are not permitted to sue our government. The only recourse is to sue the individuals our government employs and hope the federal judge will allow the case to go to a jury. Our team wanted simple justice for an innocent father and for the pain his family had suffered. But Brandon wanted his and his family's suffering to stand for something more than money damages. He wanted the so-called Patriot Act to be declared unconstitutional, since it permits the government to accomplish its clandestine invasions into our private lives without first demonstrating that probable cause exists that the subject of such secret surveillance had committed a crime. Probable cause has always been the bedrock of our protection against a police state in America. On April 7, 2005, Dan Egan of the Washington Post wrote, quote, "The Justice Department is acknowledging for the first time that the FBI used a secret search warrant to copy and seize material, including DNA samples, from the home of Brandon Mayfield, a Portland, Oregon man who was wrongly arrested and jailed last year in connection with the March 2004 train bombings in Madrid." In statements and testimony this week, Attorney General Alberto R. Gonzalez said that some of the special powers used to spy on Mayfield were strengthened by the USA Patriot Act. The department acknowledged that during clandestine searches of his home, the FBI made copies of computer drives and documents, and that 10 DNA samples were taken and preserved on cotton swabs, and 6 cigarette butts were seized for DNA analysis. Authorities took approximately 355 digital photographs. Mayfield was also the target of electronic surveillance and other physical searches authorized pursuant to FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which governs such warrants and was expanded under the Patriot Law. Representative John Conyers wrote to Inspector General Glenn A. Fine yesterday that it is a frightening prospect that an innocent person can have his home secretly searched, his DNA secretly taken and stored, and his computer files raided by the federal government. Now, the Bush administration apparently believes that Mr. Mayfield is not even entitled to know the extent to which his privacy is being invaded. End quote. Our team's Michelle Longo Eder was a natural-born ferret, and more than Rosenthal or I, was responsible for the facts we gathered. I remember finding her on her hands and knees facing a mammoth pile of articles spread out on the floor of her office. She missed nothing printed or hinted. She attended a National Investigators Conference where the supervisor of the FBI's fingerprints was giving a seminar at which he made excuses for the Bureau's wrongful identification of Brandon's fingerprint. Michelle was our mole, all right, and daily she was reporting to me. Tiger, have you seen the Netflix quote-unquote documentaries of Ruby Ridge and Waco? Came out a couple years ago.
No, I'm sorry. They're on my watch list, though.
Yeah, they're, as good as it gets, I suppose. But what they did was they brought in the FBI agents responsible for, obviously not the shooter of his wife, but they brought in Mrs. Weaver. But they brought in FBI agents responsible for that circus. And they have these alligator tears that they're crying. They have these this faux show of regret. Well, we had no idea that she was dead. Wow, they are broadcasting, Vicky, why don't you come out? Vicky, what are you making for breakfast, Vicky? Wow, she's dead on the table. And you have the FBI agent saying, look, we had no idea. We're so sorry. And it was just so contrived.
Yeah, I hate that. I have no words.
And that's what he's saying here about the Mayfield case. This lady, Mrs. Eder, the attorney that he's working with, she went to this National Investigators Conference where the supervisor of the experts who pointed to Mayfield and said, this is the guy. They were making excuses for why they screwed up so badly. They didn't dare to say, yeah, we screwed up. Yeah, he was innocent and we were wrong. When is the last time you ever heard a cop say that? Yeah, we arrested an innocent man. We were wrong about the evidence. I don't know if I've ever seen that, quite frankly. Maybe I'm just being uncharitable because of my personal situation, but I don't recall ever seeing that. Far more often you see things like this, where the supervisor is saying, well, here's an excuse. We certainly didn't screw it up. We did everything right. It's just, things happen. Or, my favorite, we acted on the best information we had at the time. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayfield, that your children were taken from you. I'm sorry that you're going through all this, but we acted on the best information we had at the time. That's my favorite cop-out. To continue, during the discovery phase in our lawsuit, the government was ordered to furnish us all relevant evidence, which included an email from an unidentified FBI operative dated May 5th, 2004, a time before the FBI was exposed by the Spanish for its false identification of Brandon's print. The operative wrote, quote, there is a man living in the Portland area who is being tied to the Madrid bombing by a fingerprint at the scene. His name is Brandon Mayfield, Muslim convert and attorney. Note, Muslim convert comes before attorney. Earlier this week, this is the report that they got in Discovery. Earlier this week, the LA Times reporter in the Paris bureau called the legate in Spain, Ed Sanchez, to ask about information the reporter had heard that there was an American tied to the Madrid bombings. At that time, we don't think he had the name or location or the fact that the evidence is a fingerprint. The problem is there is not enough other evidence to arrest him, that is Mayfield, on a criminal charge. There is a plan to arrest him as a material witness if and when he gets outed by the media. This is gold when you're suing somebody. This is why no one puts anything in writing anymore in law enforcement. The problem is that there is not enough other evidence to arrest him on a criminal charge. There is a plan to arrest him as a material witness if and when he gets outed by the media. So they knew full well they did not have evidence to arrest him on a criminal charge, and they were planning to get him anyway, by any means. If the media got to him first, if the media took his name and said the FBI is looking into this guy, they were going to arrest him anyway, even knowing there was no evidence of him even being involved in this. That's the FBI at work for you, ladies and gentlemen. Neither the National Press Office, this is the FBI report continuing, neither the National Press Office nor the Portland Division has received any media calls as of this morning. If you receive a call from the Times, we would ask whether or not publication is imminent. The powers that be are trying to hold off as long as possible on any arrest, but they want to make sure an arrest happens before anything hits the media. Amazing sentence. That is like, you find a writing like this in Discovery, your case is won. To complicate things, the legate just notified Portland that he and it had the details about the evidence that it said it planned to publish soon. Thanks for your help. And then it's signed. The FBI, this is Gerry Spence speaking, now that the quotation is done, the FBI had just barely beaten the press. Brandon was arrested the next day before anything hit the papers. Is that insane or what? It's just, this isn't the exception to the rule. For those of you thinking this is outrageous, this is the rule. This is how law enforcement operates in America, whether at the federal level or the state or local level. And here's the dirty secret. The FBI goes around the country training law enforcement. So the way the FBI does it, state and local police do it too, because they were trained by the FBI. So anything that you despise about how the FBI breaks the law to go after innocent people, they are teaching those same tools of the trade to state and local law enforcement. This is America. This is the police state. Then you have a section on how the judiciary became involved. The federal courts, I'm not going to read this entire section. We're going to skip this section, but just so you know, the federal court system is supposed to be a random assignation of cases. So you get a case filed, it is randomly assigned to one of the federal judges, right? That prevents any sort of even appearance of impropriety or of judges taking a case that they want or that they have an inclination to take because they feel a certain way about the case. So it is randomly assigned, but Mr. Spence goes into this entire story about how this case of Brandon Mayfield was not randomly assigned. In fact, it was randomly assigned and then reassigned to a different judge. And they filed a motion on this to have it assigned back to the person it was originally assigned to. And they won. Without a hearing, apparently. They didn't even have to fight about it. Just calling them out on that level of corruption was enough to get it put back to the original judge. So, I believe this is the final section here. Let's see. Boy, that's a long section. And we only have 4 minutes. So, you know what? I'm going to recommend that you all go and buy or find the PDF, go to Amazon, whatever you want to do. Get the book, Police State, How America's Cops Get Away with Murder, and find that final section of Chapter 2, The Secret Lies of the FBI. So we talked about judicial corruption. We talked about law enforcement corruption. We talked about the effect that it has on a man's family when he is arrested on false charges. Anything else you'd like to talk about this evening, Tiger, before we depart?
Well, first, I do recommend people get the book. It's Gerry Spence, one of, if not America's greatest attorney. He authors it. He talks about just every chapter is stories like this about police corruption and walking all over our constitutional rights. You get those stories, you get those facts, and for any attorneys out there, you get to see a bit about how Spence argues and wins these cases as well. So I recommend that. Before we go, I also recommend that people actually go and watch the Chauvin trial, because I'm watching it every day, and then I see the news coverage, and they're not covering it. They're not covering it. I'm worried that we're going to get a verdict one way or the other, and people are not going to actually know how we got that verdict. So with as big of a case and impact this trial has had, I recommend people watch it. Watch it on Court TV. I believe there's people live streaming on YouTube, however you want to watch it.
True. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who missed the beginning of the show and who are asking about the Olympics, we talked about that in the beginning. I am first place in the Olympics. It's a competition for all Florida lawyers and judges, and I am beating every judge and lawyer and bar association in the state of Florida right now, and I will continue to do so all the way to the conclusion of this at the end of May, so you can follow the progress of that devastation at my Instagram account, which is the Invictus Law Firm. Should be the only Invictus Law Firm on there, so you can follow that. We are, for those of you who missed that whole segment of the show, we have changed the format of this show so that we will not just be doing tonight, Monday nights at 8 o'clock. We are going to be doing every weekday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we will be seeing you tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody. Actually, I was going to make some pithy comment, but I can't think of it. So it just took me a minute to find the outro track. Good night, everybody.
Take a look at my life and realize nothing left. 'Cause I've been blasting and laughing so long that everyone thinks my mind is gone. But I never crossed a man that didn't deserve that. To be treated like a punk, you know that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and the way you're walking, 'cause this life alone will leave you lined in chalk. Been spending most of life living in the gangster's paradise. Been spending most of life situation that got me facing. I can't live a normal life, I was raised by the stripe. So I gotta be down with the hood team. Television watching got me chasing. Death ain't nothing but a heartbeat away. I'm living life to a die.